Hi everybody, I'm Linda. Welcome back to No Deliveries here. Today's video is all about canners, pressure canning and water bath canning. I have one water bath canner, which is back there with the funnels on it. I have three Mirros, 1, 2, 3, and I have one All-American, and that's it right there. So I did do a previous video about a week or so ago. I'm learning how to link. I'm going to be 65, so I'm learning, but I will try and link that. And in that video, I explained all about mason jars, the types of jars, the what you would use certain size jars for, which jars are good for canning, not canning, which jars are good for the freezer. So I'll try and link that below. But today's video is all about the pressure canners. Now, anytime you're doing soups, stews, meats, beans, vegetables, basically your low acid foods, you need to use a pressure canner. If you're doing pickles, jams, jellies, tomatoes, fruits, you can use a water bath canner. Now with tomatoes, if you're doing plain tomatoes, you can use a water bath canner. But the minute you add any vegetables to make a tomato vegetable sauce, you want to, or a chili with tomatoes, once you add anything other than tomatoes to that jar, you need to use a pressure canner. So if you like tomato sauce with mushrooms and onions, you put those mushrooms and onions in, and you will need to use a pressure canner. So every pressure canner is different. There are many models out there. Tefal, Presto, I believe there's a Buffalo brand, and there's Mirro, and there's All-American, and they come in different sizes from small to you can double stack your jars in it. And I will say that the All-American is an extremely heavy canner, and as much as I would love to have a double stacker, the weight, they're just very, very heavy. So it makes more sense to me to just stick 2 canners on my stove, or 3. I do have a regular propane stove, well, apartment size, but I have a wood cook stove also, so I can do canning on that. So let's get into some of the basics about these canners. This is the bottom of my Mirro, and it's one of my Mirros, and it's kind of hard to see, but on the bottom of your canner, especially the Mirro brand, you will see a model number. It will tell you how many quarts it is. This is 16 quarts, and let's see, right here, 1266. This canner was made in December of 1966. So on the bottom of the Mirros, it'll tell you what year, the model number, and the quart size. And because each canner uses a different size gasket, the Mirro canners, and I believe the Tefal and Presto, use a rubber gasket. The All-American does not use a gasket. It uses metal to metal and knobs. So you also have your steam vent on all of your canners, no matter what model you're using. You have your steam vent, you have your pressure release valve, and you have your weighted gauge with 5, 10, or 15 pounds pressure, depending on your elevation. When you are pressure canning, it is very important to know your elevation so that you can at the proper pounds pressure. We're not doing Russian roulette and canning improperly to make people sick. So you want to use approved recipes, approved times, and approved pounds pressure for your elevation. This is pressure canner number 2, my Mirro. This one was made in May of 94. It's a 12 quart, model number M like Mary, 0512-11. So when you order your gaskets, you need to know what size gasket you need based on the year your canner was made and the model number. This gasket right here will fit this canner because it was made after 1983, and the same with the canner number 3. That was made after 93. So I keep several of these gaskets on hand. These gaskets are thinner than the ones needed for canners made prior to 1983. This canner that was made in 1966, I need a different gasket, and they're thicker, and the one I have, actually, I have to replace, so that's on order. I have not gotten the thicker gasket for this canner yet. So, this is what the inside of this one looks like, and there is a rack that goes on the bottom, and I just have it in another canner. You always want to make sure you wash and thoroughly dry your gaskets after each use. The new gaskets, I rub a little bit of olive oil on it, and after I wash and dry them, just to get it in there. Once you get your gasket, you want to slide it, and you'll see there's ridges here. You want to slide your gasket underneath all these ridges. Once your gasket is in, you put it on your pot. So we're going to use pressure canner number 2 of the Mirros just for example. So you see I've got my rack in the bottom. You need to have a rack. You want to keep your jars off the bottom of the pot. So if you don't have a rack, you could use the rings from the jars. Let me show you those. If you don't have a rack, you can take the rings from the candy jars and line those up in the bottom of the pot and put your jars on those. The main thing to remember is do not put your jars directly on the pot itself. You need to have either the rack or the rings on the bottom. So once you get that in, your pressure canner, each one has a specific amount of water that is needed to produce the steam. So my canners take anywhere between 2 to 3 inches of water. I always measure my water before I put my jars in. Before I put anything in, I measure to make sure I have between 2 and 3 inches of water in my pots before I put anything else in. Please follow whatever directions come with your canner or whatever directions come with the canner you might be purchasing. So, and I'm sorry, I'm sniffling. My allergies are out of the stratosphere. So after you've got your water in, you have your rack or your rings, you would load your jars in. You've prepped your gasket and have that in. And the next thing you want to do is put your lid on, and you can see right here it says open and close. So what you want to do is line the lid up, and remember it's got those ridges in there, and you turn it until it locks, and you see you cannot lift that pot up. So once you get that on, this is your vent pipe, and I should have said that before, but before you put your lid on, you want to check your vent pipe, blow some air through it, take a toothbrush or make sure that is free flowing, that there is no debris in there. So make sure your vent pipe is clear. Hold it up to the window, see if you see light coming through it, blow through it, whatever. If it looks like there's something clogging in there, please clean it with a a straight pin, a toothpick, a small brush, but keep your vent pipe clean. After you have done all this, you've got your water in, you've got your rack or your lids, you've filled it with your jars, you've got your lid on, and everything's good to go. You would put this on your stove and get it up to start heating it. And now with cold pack canning, you want to start with cold water. Cold water, cold jars, cold food. If you're packing hot pack, you need hot water, hot jars, and hot food. It is very important to remember cold pack, cold water, cold jars, hot pack, hot water, hot food. You do not want to interchange, because the temperature change of a hot jar going into cold water or vice versa could cause those jars to crack. So I've got everything ready. My vent pipe is clear. I've got all my food in. I'm ready to go. I'm going to put this on my stove, and I'm not going to turn it up full flame. I want it to heat gradually, especially when I am starting out with a cold pack processing item. So once this starts heating, steam will start coming out of this vent, and I have a video. I'm still learning to edit, so it just takes me a long time. Steam will start coming up. When you get a good amount of steam coming out, you want a time for 10 minutes. You want to release steam from this for 10 minutes. Once your 10 minutes is up, you will place your weighted gauge. Now, my Mirros are old. They do not have a dial gauge. They are strictly weighted gauges. So for our elevation, we're at 3,000 feet. I need to can at 15 pounds pressure. So after the canner has vented for 10 minutes, there's a little hole underneath the number. I will put this on at 15 for my pounds pressure. If you were lower, you would do whatever is appropriate for your elevation, 5, 10, or 15. I would put mine on for 15, and I will increase the heat just a little bit. Once it starts getting to pressure, you'll see some little bubbles coming out. And you can, I equate it with driving a stick shift. I can drive a stick shift, and I can tell by the sound with my driving. I could tell when I was driving a stick, I need to shift gears. You just get used to that sound. It's the same with the canner. I can tell by the sound it's making that it's getting ready to start, that it has come up to the pressure. So once it comes up to pressure with these weighted gauges, it'll start jiggling. It'll jiggle like this. It could spin all the way around. It just may do a little rocking back and forth. My grandkids, every time this would start jiggling, they called it the dancing pot. And they were young at the time. There was 4 of them, and they were all under 6. And they would come in the kitchen and they'd start dancing because they had to dance along with Grandma's dancing pot. So this would start jiggling. Once you get a steady jiggle, you adjust your stove to the sweet spot because you don't want it to really go without jiggling. You want to keep a steady jiggle, so you don't want it to stop jiggling for long periods of time. It may only jiggle between 1, 2, 3 times a minute, 2 minutes. But if you don't hear any jiggling for several minutes, you have got your flame or electric too low. So I just find a sweet spot where I get a steady jiggle, and then once it starts jiggling, I set my timer. So say I was canning pork with my elevation at 15 pounds. I've started jiggling, and pork in pint jars, actually meat in pint jars, is 75 minutes for pints. So I would set my timer for 75 minutes. I would keep my stove at the sweet spot, and this would jiggle. Once my timer is off, I will turn my stove off, and I leave it. You don't want to touch your pot. Don't be tempted to lift this off because you'll hear sss, and you're just letting the steam out, and which will cause siphoning. Just let this come off pressure gradually by itself. It can take 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It could take 45 minutes. Do not be tempted to go, is it time yet after 15 minutes? Because let me see if it's done. And you're just going to hear air coming out. It'll go, and you know you're losing siphoning, and it's not ready. Once that time has passed, you can safely lift this off, and it will be very, very hot. Use a pot holder. You want to take this off. You should not have any release of air or steam. And once that's off, you want to open your lid. You will open your lid. You will crack the lid on the pot just a little bit. So you would basically, I'm trying to do this one-handed, but you want to take your lid off and just balance it a little on the pot to have what's in your kettle, in your canner, start coming to room temperature. So I do that for between 5 and 10 minutes. After that, I remove my hot jars. I keep them away from drafts, and I will put them on you can use a towel or a cloth, whatever, and you want to put your jars on there, and you want them to seal. And you just want to leave them there for at least 24 hours. You will start hearing ping, knock, a snap. You'll start hearing sounds, and that's those jars sealing. So that's it. You just leave them there, and you're done with your canner. Once you take your jars out, you are done with your canner. So that is the Mirro pressure canner. All three of mine are the same. It's the same venting process. Hot pack, hot water, hot jars, cold pack, cold water, cold jars. And I have a rack of rings in the bottom. Make sure your gasket goes with the canner that you have. Each canner takes a different size gasket. So I'm going to move on to the All-American now. This is my All-American. I believe it's a 16 quart. This one has the vent pipe and the weighted gauge, and it also has a dial gauge. And a lot of the times it'll say, a recipe will say can at 12 pounds pressure. Well, the weighted gauges, the weights, sorry, not the gauges, but the weights only say 5, 10, and 15. So you want to go, if I had something that said 13 pounds, I would go to the 15. I would not go to the lower weight. I would always go to the higher weight. So I will put the 15-pound weight on here, but this gauge right here, if you can see, I may only end up right about here, which is the 14. So, and I never want to get in the, it's like your car, you don't want to get in the RPMs. You don't want to build up so much pressure that it's over here. So you put the same thing. You would put your rack in the bottom. And if you don't have a rack or enough racks, use lids. Again, you want to put the recommended amount of water for your canner. Every one of my canners take between 2 and 3 inches of water. Your rack, your lids, or your rings. And then this canner, this is the lid, and it's heavy. There is no gasket. There's nowhere to put a gasket. So this is a metal to metal seal. Now I do wipe on this part a little bit of Vaseline just to keep it going smoothly, and there's little notches right here. So I put my lid on. And there's an arrow up here, which is very hard to see, and that's why I put a Sharpie on it. And there is an indentation here, which is, again, a little hard to see, hence the Sharpie. So what you want to do, at least with this model, is you want to line up your arrows and your indentation. Line up your arrow and your indentation. Line it up, and you'll hear it snap, and that lid is locked. That lid is not coming off. With this canner, again, no gasket, but you have these knobs, and you will put your knobs up all the way around. But when you put your knobs, let me see, right here, you put your knobs up, but you do not tighten them automatically. You want to tighten this one, and then you want to go to the one directly across from it. Again, you would tighten this one, go to the one directly across. And the same thing, you want to go across from each knob, not go here, here, and here, because you want to get the same seal around your canner, between your canner and your lid. So what we do, and a lot of time my husband does, sorry for my thumb, my finger, a lot of the times I take, this is a debubbler, and what I do, and my husband does, as we start tightening, we slide this around. And if it's too tight on this knob, but really loose on this knob, we adjust until we have pretty much as accurate as possible, the same size all the way around. And then you tighten your knobs, and you want to make sure they're tight. Again, you want to make sure you vent for 10 minutes, and you want a good steam, not a spitting steam or a light steam. You want the full steam coming up. Think Casper the Friendly Ghost if you're as old as I am. You want to see that white steam coming up. Once your white steam has come up, you vent for 10 minutes. After that, you place your weight on. Again, I'm going to do my 15 pounds. And with this type of canner with the gauge, as it builds up pressure, even before this starts jiggling, this needle will start moving slowly up. Again, find your sweet spot to maintain your pressure once you have reached the accurate pressure. So this needle will rise up, and my needle always falls, because of my elevation, somewhere between the 13 and not quite the 15, like 14 and so. And the thing with these gauges, you can take them, I believe it's the extension office, and they can test them and calibrate to make sure everything is right so that you are getting accurate readings. I love this canner because it doesn't have a gasket, and to replace the gaskets, they do get expensive. So the best place I have found to get the canner gaskets, especially for my older Mirro, and this is not a sponsored video, is pressurecanneroutlet.com. They have a wide variety of gaskets for pressure canners and pressure cookers. So, and I believe you can get the weights there also. But it's nice. I don't have to replace the gasket. It is a very heavy canner, and this is not even the big daddy of them. These are more expensive. The All-Americans are more expensive, even for the smaller models. This is a 16 quart. So even this one runs a couple of $100, but it is a good canner because you don't have to worry about the gaskets. Let's go to the water bath canner. Okay, this is my water bath canner, and it's quite big. It's tall. It's got to be able to hold quart jars, and you've got to be able to cover them with at least an inch of water. So you want a deep pot. Again, I use this. These usually have a rack that holds the jars. It's kind of like a basket thing, but they're shaped for jars that you can lift in and out. My rack, after years and years and years, is beat up, and I have not replaced it. So I just put a rack in the bottom, and I put my jars in there. You need to fill a water bath canner with enough water to fill your jars. If you're doing 4 ounce or 8 ounce, no matter what size jar you're using, you need to make sure that you have enough water in there to cover the tops of the jars. So what I like to do is I'll put water in there, and I'll put my jars in, and then I keep a kettle of hot water to add to it if I need to add more water, or if I need to remove some water. Because as you go filling the pot, water it displaces, so you may fill it all the way up to here, and then all the way up to here, and then if you put your jars in, it's going to be all the way up to here, and it'll just boil over. So I start with a good amount of water, and then I adjust from there. Do I need to add water, or do I need to take out? You always want to start with boiling water, because you are, most of the time, especially with jams and jellies, you are doing hot food. So again, hot water, hot food, hot jars, cold food, cold water, cold jars. Once you get your food in there, you want to put, and you've got enough water to cover your jars. You want to put your lid on, and you want to bring it to a rolling boil. That's why you don't want too much water, because it boils all over. You want to bring it to a rolling boil, and then you will process for whatever time is called for what you're processing. Now, when I mentioned tomatoes, let me explain. If you do a salsa, because of the vinegar that's in there, you can water bath salsa, relish, chow chow, pickles, things like that. But if you're adding the other items to tomatoes, they do have to be pressure canned. Like when I make sauce with onions and peppers and mushrooms, I cannot water bath that. I will pressure can that. Okay, let's go over a few of the supplies needed for canning. These items, assorted funnels, and this gadget collection up here are needed whether you are water bath canning or pressure canning. The first thing you need is a debubbler. You do not want to use metal on your canning jars. There's a chance of a chip, a nick, or a crack. Just use plastic, a wooden spoon, a chopstick. But this is actually a ball debubbler, and you just slide it down in your jar, and it removes any air bubbles in there, and it helps pack your food in. So you want a debubbler, and there are several different ones of those on the market. This is another type of debubbler and a rubber spatula, so you can, go around your jar, remove your air bubbles, and it's not metal, and you don't have to worry about messing up your jars. Another debubbler looks like this. Again, go around your jars, debubble, press your food down. But this one also, here we go, it'll focus. It also has the measurements for headspace because you have to have the appropriate headspace when you're canning. So this one will show you if you're at 1 inch, 3/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, or a 1/4 inch. So let me get a jar and I'll show you. Okay, so let's say I was canning in this jar and it required a 1 inch headspace. I would put the lip of this tool right there, and I would make sure that this little, the end there was right at the, and if the food is at that item, at that mark, that means I have 1 inch headspace. If it's above that, it means I have too much and I need to take some out. Sorry for the shaking. It means I have too much and I need to take some out. And if it's well below that, it means I need to add some more. So you just move up as you need it, 3/4 inch, a 1/2 inch, or a 1/4 inch. So you get your debubbler, and to monitor your headspace. But after a while, you can pretty much know that up to this rim here is a inch. This would be a 1/2 inch. You get to know after you've done this for years, and I have been doing this for, I don't want to talk about that because then it lets you know how old I am, although I'll be 65. But this lets you know, you get to know where your headspace is after you've done it for so long. So that's how that works. This has a magnet on the end. And this, you can lift your lids out of the hot water. I know we used to always have to boil not so much boil, but get them hot to soften the rubber. Now they say you don't have to soften the rubber. Now it depends on the lid. I always put mine in some warm water. If you make the mistake of getting the water too hot, this will just pull out one lid at a time so you can place it on your jar. You can pick it up with your fingers. You can, I never use a fork or metal because I'd always be afraid I'm just going to damage the rubber seal. So I just, I use this or my fingers. So, and one time my husband had this little extending thing. It was a magnet with a light, and I just grabbed that, and we won't talk about that. Okay, then you also need a jar lifter. I like this one because it really clamps the jars good when you're putting them in your kettle or taking them out of your canners. This really holds on to it. It's got a nice rubber grip at the top. I actually have two of these. My husband bought me these, and I really like these because I really get a good grip on the jars. They are hot. They are heavy. You do not want them to break. This is another jar lifter. This one also was a ball. This is an older one, and I've had this, oh my gosh, probably 30 years. And I just don't like this. I feel like there's too much movement in it. It doesn't give me a good grip. And I feel like my jars always slip. But this is a jar lifter also. Okay, let's talk about funnels. You've got your stainless steel wide mouth funnel, and this will fit in a wide mouth jar or a regular mouth jar. So I have a stainless steel funnel. I have just a regular blue funnel. I think these are ball. Yeah, these are ball. My husband bought me these too. So I have this type of funnel. And I also have, again, my husband bought me this. This will fit on wide mouth and regular mouth jars. And this one, if it'll focus, when you put the funnel on the jar, you can see where your headspace is to fill it. It'll show you fill it to this part, you get 3/4, you get a 1/2 inch. This one will fill it, and the very bottom would be your 1 inch. So there are numerous types of funnels out there. It just depends on what you like, what you can find, and what you can afford. So these are my canners. I do have the 4 pressure canners and the 1 water bath canner. And I really like them. I do a lot of canning. It's a great way to preserve food, from jams and jellies and pickles to beans to pie fillings to meats to soups to stews. I also have a vacuum sealer, and I will share that as in another video to show other ways to preserve food. I do not have a freeze dryer. I don't think I would ever get one. There's a lot of maintenance involved, and the amount of time it would have to run, and the wattage with our solar system. And I just don't think it's feasible for us. So, and as far as a dehydrator, I use solar dehydrating. I do not have a regular dehydrator like an Excalibur. So these are my canners. Oops. And my Mirros are quite old. Again, I have one made in February of, my number 3 back here was made in February of 76. The number 2 one right here that I showed you was made in December of 66. And the other one that I've taken off the table, sorry for my finger again, was made in May of 94. And they will have their model numbers on the bottom, and they will have the quarts. Again, not a sponsored video, but if you're looking for gaskets, please try pressurecanneroutlet.com. My gaskets average about $19 to $24. The older gasket for the canner made in 66, I believe when I purchased it was $24.96. And the gaskets for the newer canners, the one made in 76 and, the one made in 94 was $19.96, and the ones made prior to 83 were $24.96. So I'm sorry this got a little long. I just wanted to share some of the canners and what you need for canning, and why you need a water bath canner and pressure canners, and the tools that you can use. So I hope you enjoy this. Thanks for stopping by. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'm new at this. Stick me with a chainsaw and a come along out in the forest. Stick me in the garden. Stick me out in boot camp all over again, and I'm good. Stick me with technology and trying to edit videos, not so good. But I'm trying and I'm learning, so please be patient with me. Thanks, everybody. Bye.